everyone. My name is Emily Wirzba, and I am the Policy Associate for Sustainable Energy and Environment at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. And so this morning I'm just going to talk to you all a little bit about who FCNL is and what we do, and what are ways that you all can get involved in our work. And then this is really a space for you all to ask any questions that you might have about the organization as well. So also, before we begin, a little bit of background about me personally. So I'm from North Carolina. My family is in the Chapel Hill, Durham area. And I went to school at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And I studied political science and philosophy with the poverty studies concentration. So I was really interested in figuring out how do you ground policy on a strong ethical and values grounding. And so I love thinking about that question, and so I am not Quaker personally, but my grandfather is a really big peace activist, and so he was familiar with FCNL and connected me to the organization. So I started working for FCNL in 2013 as a young fellow, which is a year-long paid opportunity for recent college graduates. And then I stayed on. I was asked to stay on a second year, and then they recently just hired me to stay on even more long-term as a lobbyist. So I'm really excited to be here with you all. And FCNL was founded in 1943. We are the oldest peace lobby and the oldest religious lobby on Capitol Hill. So our mission is to bring Quaker values and that testimony to Congress, to try to enact policies that we think reflect Quaker values around the country. So our mission statement, we call it the We Seeks. So I'll read those to you. I think they're really powerful, and they're what kind of guide all of our policy work in DC. So it's, we seek a world free of war and the threat of war. We seek a society with equity and justice for all. We seek a community where each person's potential may be fulfilled. And we seek an earth restored. So those are the four kind of visions that we have for the world. And the way that we seek to go about those changes is through dialoguing and meeting with members of Congress. This is, I think when you look at various issues that you care about and want to make change on, there are lots of ways you can do that. There are individual decisions that you can make about your own lifestyle. Maybe that's looking at what type of vehicle you drive, or if you take public transportation or walk, kind of how you consume, what you eat. So there's like kind of individual lifestyle decisions you can make if you care about an issue. You can write letters to the editor, articles for your local newspaper. This is something that a lot of our constituents do often, is we help them figure out how to effectively amplify their voice in the community through writing. If you want to make change, you can also get involved in direct action. So maybe you are a protester, or maybe you march with lots of people, like I did this past September at the People's Climate March in New York City. And finally, there's lobbying, which is basically interacting with your member of Congress and asking them to do something and explaining why you want them to take that action. So I think a lot of times when you hear the word lobbying, I had a very negative connotation of it at first. You think, oh, it's big corporations in a back room, funneling money into a member of Congress to get them to take an action. But really, it's just, I like to think of it as basic democracy in action. And so maybe, if you've never gone and spoken to your member of Congress, have you ever tried to negotiate with your boss to get a higher salary? Or back when you were a teenager, did you ever have to try to persuade your parents to let you use the car for something you wanted to do? All of those types of situations are lobbying. It's figuring out how do you use kind of effective persuasive tactics to have a very respectful dialogue, but that's well thought out, with good points to back up your position, and it's engaged in relationship building. So I think what makes FCNL unique from other lobby organizations, one, we're very nonpartisan. So we don't endorse any candidates from either party. we work with everyone. So we obviously have certain policy goals, and so we're willing to, maybe there's a member of Congress that we disagree with on most issues, but if there's one issue that we do agree with them on, we work with them on that. And I think especially in the environmental program where I work, we do that a lot, try to find common ground with the others. Something else that sets our lobbying apart is that we really strive to see the light within each member of Congress, which can be very difficult and frustrating sometimes, but remembering that that we have something in common with each person that we talk to, even if it maybe at the first glance we don't think we do. So figuring out how do we connect with them and how do we see them as human rather than automatically assuming we have nothing in common with them. So I think that's a really unique voice to our lobbying work. And we work on behalf of Quakers around the country. So the way that we decide what we work on is through our priorities process. So different monthly meetings and yearly meetings nominate people to sit on our general committee. And every 10 years, we do what we have, we revise our policy statement, which I brought a few of them over there. And this is what guides all of our work. And so this process takes a long time to come to consensus to, but by the end of that process, we have our orders of what we need to work on, and it's also the lobbyists have a lot of flexibility to say these are the values and the things that friends want us to work on, and then we look at what's moving in Congress and help figure out what legislation we think best fits those values that have been set out for us to act on. So as an organization, we work on all sorts of issues. We have people working on peace in the Middle East. We have people working to support diplomacy with Iran rather than pass new sanctions. We have someone working on nuclear disarmament. We have a fairly new peace building team. So our, war is not the answer is the big sign that I saw you all have in your parking lot. And this peace building team seeks to try to adjust to what is the answer if war is not. And so they look at kind of local peace building on the ground. Our people on that team have recently been to Kenya and Burundi and several other countries to really try to meet with local peace builders on the ground to see how Congress can help support funding to ensure that the State Department and USAID and other departments have adequate funding to do this peace building work. We, on the domestic side, work on a variety of issues as well. So we have people who work on ending mass incarceration, on kind of supporting poverty, domestic poverty programs. I work on the environment and climate change along with one other person. We have someone working on Native American issues, on campaign finance, on immigration. I feel like I'm forgetting other things. Oh, and then another big goal is looking at the national budget and where our priorities, where that lies. And so we seek to kind of reduce the amount of money that the Pentagon and the military gets and increase spending for social needs. So I brought a chart. I have lots of copies of this, but it's where does your income tax dollars go? And maybe you all have seen this from past years. But we look, and in 2014, you look at every dollar of taxpayer that a taxpayer spends, and we found that 40% of that dollar goes to pay for current or past wars, compared to the only 2% that goes to preventing war. So that's a huge discrepancy, and so we wanted to shift this piece of the dollar, and increase some of these things down here. We have lots of ways that we very fully rely upon people like you all across the country to do our work. So we have a really big emphasis on helping to support and train friends around the country who want to lobby on an issue. So we provide lobby training skills. We help people who want to host an event. We help people learn how to do effective letter writing campaigns. And we really rely on you all to do the work that we do. So for example, in my program, if there's a member of Congress that I want to meet with their staff, they really won't listen to me unless they've already heard from people in their district first. And so we help find people who want to make a difference on that issue and help them figure out how to effectively use their voice on that issue. And we have several new opportunities to kind of train leaders who are really interested in this lobbying work. we have what we have been calling the Local Lobby Leaders Program. I think they're now calling it the Advocacy Team. And this is a wonderful, we just hired a new national organizer to do this work, and this person will help train people in their communities who want to serve as a leader to help organize lobby visits in their community, help provide them support. It's a really great opportunity, and we have monthly conference calls for them to help keep them on track and provide them the support that they need to do that lobbying in district. We also recently formed the first ever advocacy corps, where we've hired 18 young adults from around the country, ages I think 19 to 30, and these advocacy corps leaders will spend the next August through May in whatever college or community they're in to do organizing work on behalf of FCNL around climate change. So we're really excited about that. There's going to be somebody in Tallahassee doing that work, kind of in the Florida region. So we're really excited about that opportunity. They'll be brought to DC for a week in August to have a summer intensive training to learn all about FCNL, how we lobby, and how they can make a difference back at home. So we're excited about that opportunity. And then we have 2 conferences a year that we invite our network to come to. So one is in November, and it's called Annual Meeting. Have any of you been to Annual Meeting before? It's a wonderful opportunity where the first, we have a couple of days where we bring our general committee in to take care of some business, but then we also have the Quaker Public Policy Institute, and that's, we've selected a topic for each year. And you have trainings, and then you learn all about the issue. We bring in top-rate speakers, and then the last day you go and lobby with folks from your district to make that ask. And so this November, it'll be on our peace building work. So we'll be asking your members of Congress to support funding and programs for local peace building and empowerment on the ground. And then every March, we have what we call a spring lobby weekend. And that is specifically designed for young adults, usually under 35, and that's another really exciting opportunity. In this past March, the topic was on climate change, and we had almost 300 young adults from 32 states across the country. It was our biggest spring lobby weekend ever. It was really exciting, and they were lobbying the members of Congress to support bipartisan action on climate change. So it was that's another way that we try to help equip people from around the country with the skills to speak with their members of Congress productively. I want to talk briefly about some of the successes that we've had. And you asked a good question earlier, how does FCNL define success? Because Congress is very partisan right now, and I think for a lot of our programs, it's not always the most easy, fruitful ground to have conversation in, but I think we've seen how our work is slowly making progress. And so I brought this document called What We Achieved Together from this past year, and I encourage you all to look at it. So some of the big major breakthroughs that we've had, this talks about. So one of them that we're really excited about is our work to help demilitarize the police force. This has been in the news a ton, and our lobbyist, Elizabeth Beavers, has been kind of on the forefront of lobbying Congress to pass a bill that will prevent the military from giving their surplus equipment to local police departments. And while she's been working really hard on this bipartisan bill, President Obama this past May announced that the U.S. will stop giving some of its military equipment local police forces. So this was a huge victory for our work, and we've been working for almost 2 years on this. So now what we're trying to do is ensure that Congress will pass a law supporting Obama's order on this to prevent further presidents from reversing that. So that's one big success. I think on another program, our diplomacy with Iran, Congress has been eager to pass new sanctions against Iran, despite the nuclear negotiations that are ongoing. And so FCNL has been urging members of Congress to hold off on passing new sanctions and giving these negotiations a chance to see what will come out of them. Because if we believe if sanctions are passed, while they're in the midst of these negotiations, it'll be seen as a sign of bad faith and will be very harmful. And so FCNL worked really hard to get a letter circulated throughout Congress, where members of Congress supported and pledged to wait to see the outcome of these deals before passing new sanctions. So that was a huge lobbying effort, and another success that so far we're able to wait a little bit longer to see what will happen with the results of the negotiations. And then finally, on climate change, which I'll talk about more this afternoon, we've been working to achieve bipartisan recognition of climate change in Congress, which seems like a kind of a low bar goal, but we see it as essential in order to really change the foundation and the dialogue in Congress about this issue. And that before we can see meaningful solutions discussed, we really need to have this baseline acknowledgement of the problem. And so we worked for over a year, probably a year and a half or 2 years, and then finally we put together interfaith delegations to lobby on this issue from a place of morality and faith. And eventually we have a Republican who has now agreed to draft a resolution in Congress that states that climate change is real and already happening, and that Congress has to do something about it. And so now we're in the stage of trying to provide this member of Congress with enough support from his own party to introduce it, but we've had a lot of success with that. It's taken a long time, but we're really optimistic about that as well. So there are ways that we're making a difference in Washington, and I think our lobbying is persistent but respectful, and it's about relationship building. And so rather than I think sometimes it takes a long time to get that meeting with your senator or with your actual member of Congress. But what we do is help encourage our network across the country that, you know, it's a ladder of engagement. So maybe you send emails to your member of Congress, maybe you call them when a big vote's happening, but then what's the next step you can take? Maybe you write a letter to the editor and mention them by name, which when you do that, they will see it. Each morning they get a roundup of all the media that they're mentioned in. And so then maybe then you try to go to their local office and talk with the staff person there about the issue. And I think the point being that if you demonstrate to the office that you're there for the long term, you're there to hold them accountable, and that you really care about helping to provide them the support they need to take action on that issue, eventually you can get granted more access, and they'll come to expect to hear from you. And I think we encourage people to do this, and recognizing that it might take longer than you would like, but that it's really worth it. And it's there was a study that came out earlier this year by the Congressional Management Foundation, and they talked to 260 congressional staffers, and they found that the most effective way to change a member of Congress's mind is to have a meeting with them from the constituent level. So more than a lobbyist going in and speaking to somebody, more than a campaign donation, what changes their mind is hearing from their constituents about the issue. And I know sometimes that can be a little hard to believe or doesn't seem possible, but I think they're held accountable to your viewpoints. And if they never hear from you or that viewpoint, then they never have to respond and defend why they are not taking that action. I think so. We always say the only antidote to organized money is organized people. And at the end of the day, a member of Congress still has a decision to vote yes or no on a certain bill. And so sometimes it's that story that they've heard from the community about how this issue affects them that really gets to their heart and changes their mind on this. So our lobbying is grounded in coming from the heart and speaking from the Quaker values. So I think it's been a really wonderful organization for me to work at. And I've learned a lot about how to approach people that I disagree with and asking them to take action. So that's a ton of information I just said, but I would love questions from any of you all, or thoughts or comments.
So when you said earlier, has anybody lobbied?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know I didn't raise my hand, but aside from going to an office,
Mm-hmm.
if you call your representatives and explain your position and why
Mm-hmm.
you want your representative to represent you,
Mm-hmm.
is that lobbying? Would you call that lobbying, or not quite?
I think somewhat, yeah. I think what's special, that's super important. Calling is very, very important, and I encourage all of you to do it if you're not already. But I think what the extra step of going into the office just shows that you're that much more committed to the issue, and so it registers higher in their minds. It doesn't mean that they don't listen to phone calls, but we like to say kind of the more effort you put into making your voice heard and having that conversation, the more likely it is to resonate. I think members of Congress get thousands of emails every day, probably hundreds of phone calls. Maybe only a handful of people write letters to the editor that mention them, and then how many constituents actually go in to the office and meet with them. So I think it's kind of the more effort you put into it, the more it'll stick with them in their minds. But definitely, calling is super important. Yeah.
I heard that with visiting an office or trying to meet with a representative, not that I have to admit I've done that it's much more effective if you have a small group than if individuals do it. Even if you make up some spurious name like we are the such and such, business owners of the world or something.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think so. So I think when you can come in showing that you represent a wide variety of perspectives from the community, that makes your voice that much more powerful. So we like to tell people, if you go in with 3 or 4 other people, and you each can say, my name is Emily, and I am a small business owner, and I sit on the board of this local nonprofit, or I attend this faith community, or this is kind of who I am within the larger community. Your voice suddenly looks a little different than just saying, my name is Emily, because you kind of can say, I don't speak for just myself, but this wider group of people. And so if you go in with 3 or 4 people, each kind of from a different perspective, it can be really powerful.
I've spoken to one of the representatives quite extensively regarding different matters, and unfortunately one of the problems seems to be that the Republicans have a stronghold basically on the committees, and even people in their parties do not agree with their party line are having to kind of toe the line, or else they are not receiving funds to come back into office. Have you dealt with that at all?
With the committee or the
with
funds?
the Republic
Yeah.
with that actual reality that is occurring?
Yeah, I mean, I think because Congress is so partisan right now, it is really hard to get people to break from the party line. But I think kind of the longer that I've been in DC, I mean, I've been in DC for 2 years almost, so not that long, but there are voices that kind of buck the party line on every issue. It's pretty rare that there'll be a vote where there's no bipartisan crossover. Sometimes that's done quietly and it's not advertised. Like sometimes you have to search through the vote record to find a certain amendment and see where that is. But you can get people to vote from their conscience, I think. But it's definitely a problem. And I think the point about fundraising is very, very true. That people want to get reelected, but I think especially speaking from my own program's perspective, our point is to try to frame the issue from a moral or faith perspective. That way you can kind of cut through some of the partisan rhetoric and some of the money and try to really connect with them and say, what does your conscience tell you to do? So on climate change, it's, you might be getting money from this utility or this oil company, and maybe you're scared of what will happen, but we as a community support you for taking action on climate change. And, what is the legacy you wish to leave your children and grandchildren on this issue? So trying to frame it in that way and connect with them at a heart level to try to cut through some of that. But I think for me, I have to remain optimistic that it's still worth it, because otherwise to give up, then they're not hearing from that perspective at all.
I definitely do think that the public, whether faith-based or in a group, go to their representatives, because there are such important issues right now, and if they don't hear from the public, they will just do it their way no matter what.
Yeah.
You said you've secured a Republican to help put forth an environmental legislation. Did you meet with him yourself? What was that interaction like? I mean, you talked about developing relationships.
Yeah.
What do you consider your relationship with the representative? I don't know if it's a girl or a guy, but
Could you tell us the name too?
Unfortunately I can't. I'm really sorry.
Oh, okay.
I would love to, but I can tell you that story. And the reason we're not more public about the name is because we're trying to build support for this person in this effort. We're afraid, So the goal is to get.
You don't want to put a target
Exactly.
on them
Exactly.
from the people who oppose, right?
Right. So it was a long process, and we, to speak to the point about kind of diverse, going in as a group of several people, we helped encourage, maybe a Quaker in a certain area to put together an interfaith delegation. So for this particular district, and they would go in and they would ask, but that was the ask of their Republican member, will you publicly acknowledge the realities of climate change, and would you consider writing a resolution on this, to this effect? And after a couple of years of this, we had it was a Quaker, a Catholic, a Presbyterian, maybe it was two Catholics, a small delegation of maybe 4 or 5 people, and they had actually, one of the members was involved with the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an organization that is asking for a carbon tax. And so this one woman who was a part of this organization had, for at least a year, had been meeting with this office on this other issue. Because of their sustained engagement with their office, they were able to then get a meeting with the member himself. And so last September, they had a meeting with him, and they came in and they started talking about climate change, and he was really nervous at first that they were asking for a carbon tax, and he's like, I can't do this right now, here's why, I agree with you that climate change is happening, but I'm not in a position to lead a carbon tax. And they said, well, that's not what we're here to ask you for. We're here just to ask you, would you write a resolution that acknowledges the realities of climate change? And he said, sure, of course, I'll do that. Yay. So our relationship with this office now, we have phone calls weekly with this office. We helped, FCNL was one of maybe 4 or 5 organizations that we're working in coalition with. So it's, we have some conservative environmental voices, some kind of larger grassroots environmental groups, and some evangelical faith organizations that we're working with in a small kind of coalition. And we helped draft the text of this resolution. And we've been, the past 6 months, working to get co-sponsors for this effort. And the goal being we want to have a small group of people who can introduce this together. So it's not just one member that's easy to pick off. So we're hoping to introduce soon. But it's been a really interesting process of, this takes a lot of work and mobilizing constituents in districts where we think the member might be amenable to having this kind of leadership. So that's kind of the process of what that's looked like. But it's been, grassroots mobilization, but also who are key leaders in that community that we could get to speak to the member of Congress about this. Sorry, I don't know if it's sense.
Well, I get the newsletter from your organization when I was at the Sierra Club and Amnesty International, and they always say sign these petitions, and you haven't mentioned that. Are they helpful or not? I always think they sign them. I don't know whether it's doing anything.
I think they're helpful. I think petitions are very helpful. I think kind of looking at the overall ladder of engagement, petitions are helpful, but it's even better if you can do it. So it's kind of, I think they're definitely really impactful, especially if you plan on going in to speak to that member of Congress's office, and you can say, we had this many people sign a petition in your district on this issue, and now this is, and you have a couple people then kind of speaking about that issue. So it's very helpful.
As you know, on Thursday, a papal encyclical is coming out. So that's really going to be a big change and may lead to more polarization. On the other hand, it's a great opportunity. So probably Catholics, which we don't really think of in many ways as our allies, but it's going to be a really good place to look for allies in the climate change thing. I think it's very important because it's about poverty too. It's linking climate change to global poverty.
We're
So
really
it's right up
excited.
your alley.
Yeah. Oh, we're so excited for it. I think it'll be huge, and it's looking at the flourishing of kind of all life, like integrated within the environment. So we're concerned about environmental issues, that means we're also concerned about vulnerable communities that are going to see the worst impacts of climate change, countries that have not contributed to emissions, yet they're, Micronesia. We heard the ambassador of Micronesia speak at a briefing that we put on last fall, and he said, "The place where I was born no longer exists, and my country is facing an existential threat, where in several decades we might not have a country anymore." So I think the Pope's message will really help make poverty and the environment a moral issue. I think a lot of members of Congress are talking about it. Some are maybe dreading it, but others, I think it'll provide them a little bit of cover and space to then kind of shift. They back themselves into a corner.
It's surprising how Catholic our government is.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good.
Yeah.
Especially the Supreme Court. My goodness.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the lobbying training? I think you said it's in spring.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people from Tampa and Clearwater, like Elaine Zagaro, Karen Putney, there are about 6 or 7 of them. And
Yeah.
Our meeting knows about it.
Yeah.
But and we would willingly support people to go.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear what are the requirements or interests or what the time is involved.
Yeah. So it's in November, the big annual meeting, the Quaker Public Policy Institute. So I've been to 2 gatherings so far, and maybe I'll speak to the one 2 years ago. So for that, you can choose to come for the whole kind of 4 days. It's usually a Thursday through Sunday. Or you can just come for like the Thursday, Friday lobbying portion of it. And so my first Quaker Public Policy Institute, the topic was on looking at the federal budget. And the ask was to Congress, can you reduce the amount of spending the Pentagon gets and increase the amount of money for domestic needs and poverty programs? And so when people got there, we had a keynote speaker. The first night was Reza Aslan, which was really, really wonderful to hear him speak. And then we had, I'm trying to think who else spoke. I don't remember, but we usually have a member of Congress who comes and speaks about the issue. We normally have a panel of congressional staffers who talk about what they like to hear from constituents and kind of from that perspective what they think when people come in and talk to them about an issue. And then usually a few people speak. We have the lobbyist from FCNL, who's like the lead on that issue. They come and speak to the group. And then you break out into sessions from your state. So then like everyone from Florida will talk and they'll practice. So we do a lobby training where we help people think through everything from the logistics of where you go, what's it like when you get to the office, to we have a lobby roadmap, and it helps people think through, we always tell people it's good to have a general structure of what your visit's going to be like, but also to remain flexible because you kind of never know what to expect. Sometimes you'll get halfway through your meeting and the staffer will say, oh, I have to go, or the member of Congress might walk in when you're not expecting it. So we help people kind of think through what the main ask is. So for FCNL lobbying, let's say you want to lobby on the budget, you wouldn't just come in and say, we want you to support this budget, but you have to have a very specific ask, and so we help people think through, which exact bill we're lobbying for them to support or not support, kind of those specifics. That way they have something really clear in their mind that they're left with. And then we help people think through, what are the compelling facts and the personal stories that you bring from your own community to make a difference on this issue. And so that, when people are in their breakout sessions, they practice. And, we do role plays, and it's really fun, and it helps you kind of get a sense of, oh, this isn't actually that hard, it's just a conversation with somebody who's there to listen to you and get your opinion as constituents from the district. And then everyone goes on the Friday and they have lobby visits with their staff, or the members of Congress themselves sometimes. So I really encourage people to do it. It's great to meet not only people from your area, but from around the country who are passionate about the same issue. And it's a great way to feel like your voice is heard by your representatives. And so yeah, so we're already, I think we're gonna have some mailings going out about this upcoming annual meeting in November. So I really encourage if people are interested in going or learning more, it's a great opportunity.
What's the topic this year?
Peace building.
Right.
So I don't know if they've decided kind of what the specific ask will be, if it'll be, funding an account at a certain level of Congress, or what that'll look like. But
Emily, are you finding Republican incrementalism with respect to acknowledging climate change as in, like, oh yes, it does exist, but, I don't think it's man-made, it's a natural cycle. Do you find, are you getting that kind of response?
Yes, definitely the way people talk about it has changed. So you'll notice it went from, climate change isn't happening at all, to, well, the climate's always been changing, to, well, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to speak to exactly what's going on. And I think most members privately know that climate change is happening. They know that. They're just not maybe publicly saying that. But I do want to draw attention to one of the Miami congressmen, Congressman Curbelo, who's a freshman Republican who recently on Earth Day had an amazing statement on climate change, saying, of course, it's human caused and Congress needs to find bipartisan solutions to this problem. I encourage you. So that was very optimistic for me. I think, wow, he's really brave and he's willing to say what he knows is right, and we need to support him for that. So maybe I don't agree with him on everything, but I can definitely thank him and encourage him in that action. So I think just looking demographically, that issue will have to change a lot.
Another thing, I don't know if you can speak to how political meetings can be as entities. Is there some rule that you know of where there's a certain amount of political action that you can do before you might endanger, is it your 501c? I don't know what our tax structure is. I have heard different things over the years about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think because our lobbying is nonpartisan, we're not we're not doing campaigning, and we're not specifically saying we only endorse certain people who take an action. And I think you can go in. I guess then the difference would be like, would you go into a lobby visit saying as a meeting, or say I represent, one voice within the meeting? I don't know. You can maybe have a minute that you bring in from the meeting to say this is what we think about the environment, or this is what we think about peace or poverty work, and kind of bringing that in and showing that's the meeting's perspective, but not necessarily advocating for a certain candidate, especially if you're going to multiple offices.
So if your voice goes in speaking what your concerns are without saying, oh, we're going to work against so-and-so, and we keep it to speaking our truth, then we're okay. It's not considered political action.
I think so. And there actually, I ran out of copies, but we have a resource that's kind of a Quaker perspective on lobbying, pamphlet that wish I had brought more copies, but I can, if people are interested, I can circulate that, or you can find it online. But it's a really interesting little pamphlet that speaks about how lobbying can be a spiritual practice, or can be a way of speaking your truth to power. So I think it's I don't see it kind of contradicting the values of approach.
I think that would be useful to know about.
Yeah.
And you don't have any now.
No, I gave them all out in Tampa.
Well, West Palm Beach counts for something. We may not be as big as Tampa, but no, that's something that I could do.
Yeah.
Is FCNL a not-for-profit,
Yes.
a lobby group, and a not-for-profit?
So we have a C4 status and a C3 status. So we have two we have the FCNL Education Fund and then the FCNL Lobbying Fund. So when people make donations, so we're just so you all know, I think I don't want to give an exact percentage, but I want to say we're around 90% individual contributions, and the rest come from grants or foundations. So we don't take any government money. We're not held accountable to any perspective, but our own Quaker values. And so people can choose to donate either to the education fund that's tax deductible or the lobbying fund. So that way we can do both, and we just bill our hours kind of accordingly.
So it sounds like as long as you remain more value-based, more specific objective-based, and not necessarily this is Democratic or this is Republican, nonpartisan-based, you're able to have any opinion you want, as long as you, approach Democrats and Republicans with equal, I know. So,
exactly.
Okay, so it seems like meetings should be able to do that too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But any political lobbying is not tax deductible. It doesn't matter. That's why you have the education fund, which I don't know. I'd be curious, but not right now, to know how you split those apart.
Yeah.
Because I make my donation, and I'm like, do I really want to support FCNL, or do I want my tax deduction? I want my tax deduction I get to education, which I feel is probably less effective because it's not going into the lobbying effort. Like the Sierra Club is the same thing. It's not tax deductible because they're involved in lobbying. It doesn't matter what point of view. If it's political lobbying, it's not tax deductible.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point. I think a lot of our ed fund money is equally important because it kind of helps us build up the resources and materials that we base our lobbying upon. So I think we really, I don't know. When I go through my week, my time is at least half and half, maybe even more time billed to the ed fund work, because whenever it's me talking to constituents about an issue or helping to, participate in coalition meetings with all of the other faith groups in Washington talking about the environmental issues, all of that counts as the ed fund time. So it still very supports, the lobbyist work as well. Just kind of if we're not directly lobbying or directly strategizing about lobbying, then it kind of counts toward the ed fund. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
If I just may say something, diverting a little bit, Emily has brought an offer from FCNL through her work on the environment to SCYM. As you know, we have been working on implementing the field secretary for Earth Care for yearly meeting. And so Emily brought us the news that, and she was at executive committee meeting yesterday, that FCNL will help train the field secretary if, that's what we approve through executive committee and the Earth Care committee. So I just wanted to bring that out and to really say thank you. That is a really cool offer.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We're excited to provide whatever type of tools can be useful to that person.
Yeah.
And I think also to the meeting, if I want you all to know, like if you all ever decide, several of you, that you want to go on a lobby visit and don't know how or don't feel like you have support to do that, I all the time give lobby trainings either over the phone or over Skype, or can come back to Florida. So you all know if you want to be supported and trained, before coming to annual meeting or something, I'm always happy to walk people through what that process is like. So.
That's really nice.
I was wondering one other thing. Do you have attorneys available to you, like when you're doing things, and that you can consult with if you have questions?
We don't have an attorney on staff employed as an attorney necessarily. I know my supervisor who works with me on climate change, she has a law degree. But so I would say we're less of a think tank. We have some people who do a little bit of research and analysis and writing on the issues, but we often rely on our partners, and each program that looks differently, but there are certain institutes or nonprofits that we kind of use their analysis to do our lobbying work. So, for example, there's a bipartisan bill that we've been lobbying on a lot in my program on energy efficiency, and I do my own analysis of some of the amendments that are being proposed, and some of it's pretty obvious to tell. like we wouldn't support this or we would. Stuff like, oh, we're going to do offshore drilling, or we're going to make it easier for schools to get grants to make their buildings more efficient. But occasionally when they're ones that we're unsure about, there's an organization, I think it's the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy or something like that, and they have a staff of 100 who do research and writing and actually write some of these bills. So then we can go to them and kind of talk through the certain issue. Yeah.
Lately, there's been a round of commercials in the Palm Beach area talking about how fracking is such a wonderful source for inexpensive energy.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do as a local group to start calling your power company and saying you disagree with their propaganda, or that and more?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting issue. And so FCNL, we don't work on kind of the local issues because we're only focused on Congress, but I think that the lobbying skills definitely are applicable at the local level. So personally, I would say talking to the mayor and your council members about this, but then also trying to get a meeting with the utility to express your concerns. And just as a quick story, at our spring lobby weekend, we had high school and college students from across the country coming to DC, and one of them was a group of high school students from North Carolina, the Carolina Friends School, who are wonderful. They do incredible advocacy work, and they decided that they wanted to do more than just meet with their senators and their representative. So they set up a meeting with Duke Energy's office in DC, and it was so great. They just, looked online until they found contact information, and they were kind of sent out a meeting request, not sure what to expect, and they were granted a meeting with 6 of Duke Energy's staff, including 2 of their top lobbyists, and they met with them for over an hour on climate change, and were able to express their positions and really have this great dialogue about what does Duke Energy think about climate change, and why does it matter, and what are their limitations and what are the constituents' concerns, and it was a really great conversation. So I think that showed me that kind of dialogue is possible, and maybe it's something that people don't think to do very often, but I think it's definitely worth it.
Call the local Sierra Club. They're involved in issues like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think it can be really powerful when you have a coalition that includes maybe the Sierra Club, but also a small business owner, and maybe so looking and seeing what are all the different perspectives that you can bring to the conversation. So it's not just kind of the usual suspects coming in to talk about an issue, but it's a lot of different viewpoints.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing with us this morning, and we look forward to hearing you later on this afternoon.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.